The clock on the microwave, a smug green digital glow against the black granite, blinked 2:30 a.m. Simone hadn't slept, not truly, in weeks. Her husband hadn't been home, and the silence from his phone had been louder than any confession. This late-night vigil wasn't a search for proof. It was the silent, cold anticipation of the inevitable, a ritual she now embraced. For months, she had meticulously logged every hour of his life in her memory, the time of his arrival, the telltale scent that clung to his expensive fabrics. It wasn't the familiar comforting aroma of sandalwood and vetiver she used to buy him from the local boutique, the one that smelled like promise and quiet evenings. No, this was the heavy, cloying scent of success mixed with strange skin and cheap desire, a scent that seemed to promise more than it could ever deliver, much like the man himself. Tonight, he didn't even try for the pretense of quiet. The silence of the high-rise condo, their 1,400-square-foot unit, bought with her savings and his debt, was shattered. Devon burst into the foyer, letting out a triumphant, alcohol-fueled sigh that sounded like a vault door slamming shut, locking her inside with his transgression. He looked impeccable, as always after one of his business dinners that actually led him into the practiced, receptive arms of Tiffany Hayes. His crisp, expensive shirt, a shade of deep sapphire blue that made his eyes sparkle, was obviously new, a purchase he had never mentioned to her. The intrusive odor of a flashy, aggressive cologne, one Simone knew had been chosen to announce his arrival, and the top 2 buttons casually undone, as if to prove to the world and to her how little he cared about domestic rules or loyalties. He was swollen with self-satisfaction, arrogant to the core. That smugness, a visible sheen on his skin, made Simone's stomach clench, not with rage, nor even with the old, familiar throb of pain. It was just sheer, physical disgust, a bitter taste of ashes in her mouth. How, she wondered, staring at the polished veneer of his tailored suit, had she ever confused this hollow man with the ambitious, if naive, young man she'd married? This Devon was a caricature. A polished salesman who regarded himself as his best, most expensive product. His eyes, slightly cloudy from the excess of scotch, but alight with a glowing, predatory sense of triumph, screamed only one thing: he was the winner. And her? She was merely his financial anchor, the dependable, dull background feature, held captive, he believed, by the co-signed mortgage. He thought that signature trapped her, proof of his accomplishment and her profound dependence. Yet, a cold, hard realization had bloomed in her soul during those sleepless nights. He wasn't the anchor. He was the heavy, festering dead weight she dragged along, and it was high time to cut the line, even if picking up the severing rope herself meant a long, difficult swim back to shore. Simone stood at the living room entrance, framed by the pale moonlight filtering through the enormous city window. Her arms were folded across her chest in her worn but warm cashmere robe, its softness a stark contrast to the rigidity of her spine. There was no accusation on her face, no tear streaks, no open anger, only a deadly, terrifying calm, a composure she had cultivated with surgical discipline over the past months. This silent, unmoving stillness was worse for him than any screaming fit, any broken vase, but he, tragically, mistook it for helplessness. He couldn't possibly grasp that she was no longer his wife, not in spirit. She was a cold-blooded observer, a meticulous witness for the prosecution gathering the final piece of evidence. 5 years, Simone thought, the silence a thick, suffocating blanket. 5 years I was a shadow, believing my quiet loyalty, my patience, my capacity for forgiveness could eventually bring him to reason. I thought the reality of our shared life would catch up to him. But he had interpreted her silence as apathetic approval and her patience as predictable weakness. He never saw her as a partner. She was just part of the expensive background, a piece of decorative furniture. The fragile flame of love had long been extinguished, replaced by the glacial resolve of justice. There was no going back now, only a path forward that led directly through the wreckage of his arrogance. Devon's greatest, most celebrated asset as a luxury real estate broker was his uncanny ability to sell, manipulate, and persuade. He had convinced himself that his own narrative, the rags to riches story he told clients, was true. But when it came to Simone, the woman he shared his bed, his debts, and his future with, he mistakenly believed those rules didn't apply. He thought she would accept him unconditionally, eternally grateful for the financial comfort he provided. He was profoundly wrong. He didn't see her at all. He only saw the reflection of his prized possession, the compliant wife he had purchased to decorate his home. He stopped right in front of her, brazen and presumptuous, not bothering to shed the aura of strange hands and strange beds. He lowered his head, a gesture so full of mockery and condescension that his usually attractive features contorted into a grimace of petty triumph. He craved a reaction, a question, tears, screaming, or broken dishes. Anything that would elevate him to the role of the tormented victim in this predictable domestic tragedy. Something that would allow him to go to work the next day in the comforting role of the misunderstood yet desirable soul. Instead, he hit a wall of icy, unmoving silence. "What are you staring at?" His voice was intentionally loud, harsh, aimed at crushing the last vestiges of her dignity beneath his polished shoe. He leaned in, the aggressive scent of the other woman's perfume, jasmine, and expensive tobacco hitting her face like a slap. "I saw the best woman in the world tonight. You're not even close to her level. You've become dull, worn out, like an old carpet that needs replacing, or a sweater that's pilled one too many times. Or did you think I was going to answer to you, my dear accountant? Go on, start your tantrum. I actually like it. It only makes me feel more desired by the women who actually appreciate my success." He waited, breathing heavily, the anticipation of her breakdown a tonic to his liquor-fueled ego. A blow, a scream, a nasty remark. Simone did nothing. She barely opened her lips, not to speak, but to release a subtle physical sigh, a deep, silent exhalation, as if shedding the last, heaviest piece of dirt from her soul. It was the sound of complete, final surrender, not hers, but the surrender of her illusions about him. Her deep gray eyes, usually soft, now looked down at him, not judging, but piercing, as if she could already see right through the expensive suit. She saw not the successful broker with piles of cash, but an empty, meaningless vessel filled only by his staggering, concealed debt. She didn't waste another second or an ounce of energy on a reply. She turned her back wordlessly and walked toward the master bedroom with an even, measured pace. Her robe whispered softly against the cool marble floor, the only sound echoing in the suffocating atmosphere. Devon, left stranded in his perfect suit in the middle of the foyer, felt a strange, sharp discord pierce his perfect world. Her silence was louder than the fiercest argument. It spoke of complete, final indifference. It devalued his triumph. It robbed him of the satisfaction of having hurt her. He stood confused for a minute, his features slackening, but quickly composed himself, dismissing her behavior as exhaustion or deep depression. Where could she go, anyway? He thought, pouring himself a final drink. The mortgage she co-signed held her tighter than any wedding vows. That's what he thought. He didn't know that the sigh she had let out was the last farewell gift her soul had sent to him, the final severance of their connection. He went to the kitchen, finished the rest of the whiskey bottle, and stumbled into the bedroom where she was already lying on her side of the bed, facing the cool wall. Devon passed out like a stone in 15 minutes, his snores a loud, rhythmic offense. He dreamed of skyscrapers, luxury cars, and stacks of $100 bills he would soon receive from his deal of the century. He dreamed of Tiffany handing him the keys to a new, sparkling, champagne-colored Porsche Cayenne as he stood on a perfectly manicured golf course, clad in an Italian cashmere suit. Simone wasn't asleep. Cold and motionless, she waited. The smell of alcohol, foreign perfume, and strange skin clung to the air, but she barely noticed it. She lay on her side, gazing into the profound darkness where the outlines of her own reflection were visible in the window pane, merging with the distant city lights. "I'm waiting for the storm to pass," she thought. "But I'm not waiting for the storm raging outside. I'm waiting for the one I myself will unleash." 17 days. That was how much time had passed since she stopped crying and started acting. His latest infidelity had ceased to be a source of pain and became a crucial, perfectly timed trigger, aligning precisely with her accidental discovery of the highly sensitive details of his main transaction. The luxury estate in the affluent suburb, Stonehaven, was Devon's golden ticket. The commission from that single, massive sale was expected to cover 3/4 of their shared mortgage, leaving them with only a negligible remainder. He planned it as his personal, undeniable triumph, a way to finally prove his importance, his status, and her inherent dependency. "He needs to feel that he needs me, but I'm the one who is just a burden to him," he had once said to a colleague, a phrase Simone accidentally overheard while walking past his open office door. He said it with a laugh, as if it were a clever joke about his stupid, obedient wife. Those casual, cruel words, laced with triumphant malice, had lit the spark that was now poised to set the entire house of cards ablaze. A month before that fateful night, Simone had taken a day trip to visit her mother, Aisha, who lived 2 hours outside the city, in a quiet, older neighborhood filled with sprawling yards and the sounds of cicadas. Aisha was a woman whose face bore the fine lines of resignation from past battles, but also the deep granite strength of survival. Aisha had lost her own husband, Simone's father, Richard, 20 years ago, to a similar crushing, cold-hearted infidelity. Richard had left her for his younger secretary, taking advantage of a loophole in their old divorce agreement, leaving Aisha financially destitute. That painful restart, the years of struggle to regain stability, was deeply etched into Simone's memory, a constant reminder of the cost of weakness. "My daughter, my angel," Aisha said, her voice rich and low, as she carefully clipped withered roses in the small garden that smelled intensely of lavender, wet clover, and damp earth. The scent was sharp and clean, a welcome contrast to the stuffy, sterile atmosphere of Simone's condo. Garden soil clung under her fingernails, a sign of honest, hard work and a life lived close to the ground. "You are so quiet, an unusual silence that worries me, honey. Be careful with silence, my love. It can either save your life if you use it as a shield, or utterly drown you if you hide inside it. Your father was just like Devon. He thought my tears and desperate pleas would bring him to reason. They only bored him, Simone. They only made him feel superior, confirming his choice to seek excitement elsewhere. A man who cheats doesn't need tears. He needs consequences he understands, delivered cold and clean." Simone watched the sharp, pristine gardening shears in her mother's hands. Aisha clipped the stems with a single precise snip, no wasted movement, the snick a sound of finality. "What should I do, Mama? I don't have the strength to fight anymore. I'm afraid that if I start screaming, I'll end up losing more than I gain, losing my own peace." Aisha put the shears aside, her hands rough from the soil and the sun, but her movements still graceful. She took Simone's cold, trembling hands in hers. "Fire is battle, sweetheart, and hot fire burns you before it ever reaches your enemy. You don't need hot fire that spirals out of control and leaves you exhausted. You need cold fire. That is a flame that burns slowly, is precise, and never gets distracted by emotion. Cold fire is justice, not revenge. Revenge consumes you from within and leaves you hollow. Justice frees you, Simone, and restores your God-given dignity. Find his non-emotional weak spot, darling. Find the foundation his arrogance rests on, the thing he truly worships, his status, his money, and shatter it with the coldness and logic he so despises in you." That crucial advice, the lesson of the cold fire, had changed Simone's entire strategy. She didn't need to cry. She didn't need to scream. She only needed to use logic against his blinding arrogance. She had to meticulously destroy the foundation his grandiosity rested upon, his status, his money, and his unwavering narcissistic belief that he was above all rules. Devon remained blissfully unaware of the most critical fact. The clients buying the Stonehaven estate, Marcus and Tasha Jones, were old acquaintances of Simone's. They had met her years ago when she was a star procurement manager at the large engineering firm Omni Structura. They trusted her implicitly, respecting her detail-oriented precision. It was through her, at a networking event she reluctantly attended with Devon, that they learned about the property in the first place. Devon, sensing a massive, easy commission, had simply taken the initiative, charming them into working only through him, and painted Simone as a helpful but ultimately incompetent intermediary. However, they occasionally still contacted Simone via encrypted corporate email to cross-check technical details, assuming she was fully informed of every step. They valued Simone's honest, technical approach, which stood in sharp contrast to Devon's slick, vague assurances. Simone knew the house had a critical, structural flaw that Devon was eagerly hiding to secure his massive commission, a fact she hadn't just suspected, but had confirmed. The foundation, situated near a known water table, had instability issues confirmed by internal geological reports from the development company that she had accessed through an old, loyal colleague, Mark. It wasn't a visible problem to the untrained eye, but it was real and guaranteed to lead to serious cracking in the load-bearing structures within a few years. Failing to disclose information of this magnitude was outright fraud and a severe violation of brokerage duties, a capital offense in their industry. The house's value would drop by 1/4 the moment this defect came to light, and Devon would lose his license. Devon snored, curled up under the down comforter, absolutely secure in his impunity and impending financial well-being. Simone sat on the edge of the bed, the coldness of the marble floor seeming to rise from her feet to her very soul. "He's a house of cards," she thought, "and I pulled the first card a long time ago when I stopped loving him. Now, all I have to do is blow." Slowly, with surgical precision, Simone pulled out her old burner phone, an anonymous, pay-as-you-go flip phone she had used for international travel and then hidden away. It was stowed deep in a drawer under old project blueprints in her study, far from his prying eyes and careless searches. She turned it on. The faint bluish screen lit up her face, not a single muscle twitching, her expression unreadable. She found Marcus and Tasha's private contact number and typed a short, lethal message. No explanation or preamble, but a verdict, a hammer blow, precise and final. "The deal for the Stonehaven estate is off. Devon is a fraud. Call me tomorrow at exactly 9 in the morning. Do not sign anything. I have irrefutable evidence regarding the foundation structure and its deliberate concealment." The message was sent. Simone turned off the phone, tucked it deep into her robe pocket, and left the bedroom silently, closing the door on his oblivious alcoholic slumber. She sat in the kitchen, poured herself a glass of ice-cold water, and watched the slow, dark dawn break over the indifferent city skyline. Her revenge was cold, not hot. She sought no retribution through scandal or physical violence. Her single, unwavering goal was to strip him of the thing he valued more than her life, his status, his money, and his sense of significance. She was carving her new, clean life out of the ashes of his old one. By 6 in the morning, the sun was up, but the condo remained dim, as if the apartment itself mourned its fate. Devon was in a deep, intoxicated sleep. Simone was already on her feet, showered, impeccably dressed in a tailored, dark blue business suit, ready for her workday. A single cup of barely touched coffee sat on the kitchen counter, its steam rising in the quiet air. She took a deep, cleansing breath. The smell of her own strong coffee, her own fresh laundry, and her own self-determination was sweet and pure. 7 o'clock. Devin finally woke up with a vile taste in his mouth, a pounding migraine, and a profound sense of self-congratulation. He stretched and noticed his wife was already gone. He took it as confirmation of his power. She dared not eat breakfast in my presence. She's hiding her sadness. He didn't care. What mattered was that in 2 days, he was supposed to close the deal that would make him financially independent for years. He could already taste the vintage champagne he was planning to open in celebration of his triumph, imagining himself tossing stacks of $100 bills to Tiffany to prove she was right to choose an alpha male. He would order his champagne-colored Porsche just as he had dreamed, 8 in the morning. He ate a quick breakfast, 2 stale bagels he smeared with cream cheese, poured himself another cup of coffee, and smugly scanned the real estate market news on his iPad. He felt invincible, an engine revving up for glory. At 9 o'clock, he was supposed to call his boss, Adrian Sterling, to confirm the finalization of the closing documents. His mood was euphoric, almost ecstatic. He was sure everything was going according to his perfect plan, that Simone was just a minor annoyance that would soon clear up, and his life would become a continuous, luxurious celebration of success and pleasure. He didn't notice that every sip of coffee, every self-satisfied sigh, brought him closer to the abyss, being dug by an invisible, yet precise, hand. At exactly 8:30, the phone rang. Not his. That was still lying silently on the nightstand. It was Simone's old, discarded emergency phone, which she only used to contact her parents. Devin, slightly irritated by the interruption, picked up the cheap plastic device. "Yeah?" he grumbled, expecting to brush off some unnecessary call, maybe a telemarketer or an errant relative. "Simone? It's Tasha Jones. Thank God we reached you." Or someone answered. "We got your message. What in God's name does this mean? A fraud? We were literally supposed to send the wire for the down payment this morning. What has he been hiding from us?" Tasha's voice sliced through the telephone line like a serrated blade. Devin felt the blood drain from his face, leaving behind a mask of cold, clammy horror. The imagined taste of celebratory champagne in his mouth instantly turned into the metallic, sickening taste of bile. He recognized Tasha's voice instantly, the client who was supposed to bring him hundreds of thousands of dollars in commission. Her voice, usually soft and friendly, was now hard, laced with disbelief and burning with indignation. It wasn't a question seeking information. It was a demand for an answer that foreshadowed something far worse than just a busted deal. He realized his perfect world had cracked, and that fissure was widening with every passing second, threatening to swallow him whole. "Tasha, this is Devin. Simone must have made a mistake. She's probably just in a bad mood, you know. A woman thing. Don't pay attention to it. The house is perfectly fine, just like I showed you. I personally walked the property with you. Your doubts are entirely unfounded. Don't insult my intelligence, Devin." Tasha's voice became icy, with a steely undertone that froze his heart. "A woman thing? Your wife explicitly said Devin is a fraud, and she wrote that you concealed foundation issues. What kind of insane nonsense is this? Were you seriously trying to sell us a house that's going to fall apart in 2 years? We trusted you, do you understand? We chose you because we thought you were trustworthy, a colleague of Simone's, not because you offered the lowest price. Marcus is a structural engineer, Devin. He's already checked the documents Simone sent him and found crucial missing geotechnical information that confirms her tip. This is slander. This is absolute slander, he screamed, jumping up from his chair. The chair tipped over with a loud wooden crash, amplifying the panic in the quiet room. His sleepy state instantly vanished, replaced by stomach-churning, overwhelming fear. He felt cold sweat run down his back, soaking his expensive, newly laundered underwear. "They're just small cracks, Tasha. They're not critical, just cosmetic. I was going to tell you. I was just waiting for the right moment to present it to you as a negotiated discount. This is all the work of jealous competitors, I swear." "You were going to tell us after we paid the full amount? After we moved our children into a house that starts crumbling in a year with a discount? No, Devin, your "I was going to" is not good enough for us. Marcus and I are calling your boss, Adrian Sterling, right now. We've already secured everything Simone sent us. Yes, she sent us the full damning documentation. We are done with you. You can forget all commissions and any future in this industry. We will demand the refund of all down payments and compensation for emotional distress, as you recklessly endangered our family and our investment. She hung up, the sharp click deafening in the silence. Devin stood in the middle of the foyer, clinging to the phone, which was hot from Tasha's incandescent anger. He felt the ground disappearing beneath his feet, the floor tilting, his vertigo not from alcohol, but from the sheer velocity of his fall. A feverish, terrifying thought raced through his head. She knew. She planned everything. But how? He had hidden all the documents, encrypted the files. Where did she get the information about the foundation? It was impossible. She couldn't have done this. He sank to his knees, frantically trying to call Tasha again, but the voicemail came up. The subscriber has restricted incoming calls from your number. He tried Marcus. Same result. They had blocked him completely. They believed Simone, not him. His perfect plan disintegrated into dust, and he felt helpless, like a pathetic insect under glass, just waiting for the crushing finger to descend. He threw the phone onto the plush sofa and tore frantically at his perfectly styled hair. His golden ticket, his triumph, had turned to ash with one short text message. He should have known that her recent, unnerving silence wasn't a sign of submission, but the absolute, crushing calm before the storm. Her eyes, in which he had seen only indifference, were in reality the eyes of a judge passing sentence. She wasn't just a wife. She was his executioner, and he himself had carelessly handed her the axe by underestimating her quiet competence. Before he could gather his shattered thoughts, his own phone exploded with a call, Adrian Sterling. The name flashed red on the screen, like a critical warning light on a failing machine. Devin swallowed, his throat instantly dry, his mouth tasting of old whiskey, fear, and now the sharp tang of failure. Devin, have you completely lost your goddamn mind? What the hell have you done? His boss's voice wasn't just loud. It was drenched in a scorching professional rage that could melt concrete and reputation alike. Marcus Jones just called me. He said you tried to sell them a house with a compromised foundation and deliberately concealed information about the load-bearing supports. He said he has proof, Devin. Photos, expert reports. Your wife gave them to him, didn't she? The Joneses were her contacts, and you used and betrayed them. I'm going to have FINRA investigators here if they decide to sue, which they've already threatened. Do you understand what this means? This is a felony, Devin, a capital offense that jeopardizes our brokerage licenses, all of our licenses. Adrian, it's just minor flaws. It's all a lie. I wasn't trying to hide anything. I beg you, Adrian, give me a chance. Devin clung to the last, desperate strand of hope, his voice pleading, almost a childish whimper. You were going to steal people's money, Devin, knowing their massive investment would be worthless within a year. Minor flaws? They sent me the documents, screenshots of your internal notes. Listen to me. Screenshots detailing your entire manipulation. Who gave you this information? I don't know how you did it, but you have compromised our entire firm. We are facing massive reputational and financial losses because of your greed. Do you know what this one deal has cost us? Not just your percentage, you fool, but the reputation of our entire office. We worked for 2 years to reach this level, to gain the trust of the Joneses and other high-net-worth clients. We were just starting to secure exclusive development contracts. And you miserable, pathetic liar, you destroyed everything just to buy yourself the newest Porsche. Devin tried to speak, to offer some pathetic excuse, but the words caught in his throat, suffocated by terror. He could hear his own heart pounding madly in his ears, a frantic drum against the silence. He felt like he was drowning in the accusation, as if the air was being cut off from his lungs. He recognized that Adrian Sterling wasn't just angry. He was panicked about the possible catastrophic consequences for himself and the company. And that paralyzing fear made him especially cruel, because he desperately needed a high-profile scapegoat to sacrifice. "So here it is," Adrian Sterling's voice dropped to an icy whisper that was far worse than a scream. "You can throw away your office key. It won't work anyway. Your work computer is being locked down as we speak. You are fired, Devon. Fired with dishonorable discharge and a reference so toxic it will serve as a warning. No reputable firm in this city will touch you, because I will personally ensure your name becomes synonymous with fraud and toxic asset. I will personally call all my contacts and tell them what a desperate scumbag you are. I will crush your reputation so thoroughly that you'll have nothing left to save. Don't even show your face here. And you know what? If Marcus and Tasha sue, and they absolutely will, I'll be happy to hand over all the information about you, all your dirty secrets, every single email. Get lost. Now." A dial tone. A long, drawn-out dial tone that sounded like the final chord of his ruined life. It wasn't just the end of his job. It was the abrupt end of everything he knew, everything he was proud of, everything he had built his future on. His entire foundation, built on lies and arrogance, was collapsing. He slumped onto the sofa, gasping for breath, the room spinning around him. He had lost. He had lost everything. His golden ticket, his status, his reputation, his very identity. And all because of Simone, his quiet, obedient, mortgage-laden wife. He stared at his expensive phone as if it were the death sentence she had delivered without a single word. At that precise, devastating moment, as if by some devilish, choreographed plan, a notification popped up on his phone, a brief alert that served as the final, brutal nail in his coffin. It was from the bank's legal division. "Dear co-borrower Devon V. Vance, you are hereby notified of the receipt of an application from the second co-borrower, Simone P. Rhodes, regarding the restructuring of the mortgage loan and the division of marital assets. Please report to the bank branch to review the details of the claim and discuss the next steps for executing this application and the consequences of your inaction. We expect your visit within 3 business days. Otherwise, the case will be handed over to the court for forced division, prioritizing the financially stable co-borrower." Simone. She hadn't just torpedoed the deal. She had hit him at his most vulnerable point. His finances, his home, his illusory sense of security. Asset division. She was taking her legally entitled 50%, plus potentially more due to his documented fraud, leaving him with mounting debt and emptied accounts. His quiet, obedient wife, the one he dismissed as merely an accountant, was stripping him of everything he considered his property, doing it with the cold, unfeeling precision of a master strategist. This wasn't just a separation. It was a complete, methodical annihilation, executed with the terrifying efficiency of an engineer who had calculated every weak point in the structure. Devon frantically grabbed his phone and called Tiffany. She was the best woman in the world, the trophy he had humiliated Simone over. She was his comfort, his youthful escape, young, beautiful, working at a big advertising agency. She valued him for his success, his expensive gifts, and his aggressive generosity. Now, he needed her support, her sympathy, her consoling touch to somehow restore his broken, collapsing world. He imagined her embracing him, her soft voice telling him everything would be fine, that she believed in his talent. How utterly wrong he was. "Hello, Tiffany?" His voice trembled visibly. He struggled desperately to maintain an appearance of self-respect, trying to sound confident, but the desperate tremor in his vocal cords betrayed his utter devastation. "Oh, Dev. Hey, why so early?" Her voice was sleepy but content, almost bored, as if he had woken her after a very pleasant night that she wished was still going. He imagined her lying in her expensive designer bed, waiting for him, but that waiting had nothing to do with him now. "Tiffany, I need to talk to you. This is very serious. I just got fired, and the asset division has officially begun. My wife. She's absolutely destroying me, understand? She set it all up. She's a traitor, a vengeful mouse. Fired? The echo of his voice was hollow in the receiver, followed by a telling pause. A pause that contained the complete calculation of his new, vastly diminished worth. The pause was long, uncomfortable, and then a tone of something very similar to slight annoyance, perhaps even disgust, crept into her voice. What do you mean, fired? How? You were just about to close the deal of the century. I just told you yesterday how great you are, how successful. You said you'd be one of the richest brokers in the city tomorrow. What were you telling me about a new Porsche? Yeah, but I was set up. My wife, she ruined everything. She destroyed me. She's a plain, bitter mouse. You know what she was like. She was just jealous. Tiffany, I need you with me now. I'm coming over. We'll talk. I'll explain everything. I need a place to stay until I find a new job. You know I bounce back quickly. I'm talented. I'm a sales genius. I just need a small break, a month maybe, and everything will be fine, I swear. His voice now sounded pleading, shattered, desperate. Stay at my place? Devin, you know my apartment isn't huge, and honestly, this is kind of ridiculous. You yourself said you were a business shark, untouchable, and now some wife set you up? That sounds like a weak excuse. You probably screwed up the documentation yourself, didn't you? What does all this sudden legal trouble have to do with me and my apartment? Her voice grew sharper, impatient, devoid of any past affection. I don't need my sophisticated neighbors seeing me with someone who's fleeing from court and a soon-to-be ex-wife. This is all so petty, so low-stakes drama. You remember, I always said I value stability, and right now, Devin, you seem to have absolutely none. You're a liability. Tiffany, but I bought you so many things. Remember that watch? The one I got you in Paris? I paid for your luxury trip to the Caribbean. We had a future. You said you loved me. He pleaded for her to save him, clinging to the false currency of their past exchanges. Look, Devin, let's be honest, shall we? Her voice was hard, stripped of yesterday's flirtation and every hint of sympathy. He heard her adjusting her pillow, a clear, unmistakable sign she was tired of the entire messy conversation. Your gifts were part of our arrangement. You're a successful man. I'm a beautiful woman. You give me comfort and attention, and I give you company. It was transactional, Devin, if you want to call it that. I made you feel special as long as you could afford to buy special things. And who are you now? Unemployed, facing court, potentially homeless, and, judging by your hysterical voice, a mess. What am I supposed to do with you? I don't need your problems, Devin, neither legal nor financial. You know this isn't about love, it's about comfort and status. I certainly won't turn my stylish apartment into a homeless shelter for a man who failed. You lost your status, Devin, and without status, I'm simply not interested in you. Don't call me again, please. It was nice while it lasted. Another dial tone, this time a stab in the back that pierced his soul deeper than Simone's cold revenge. The woman he had bragged about to Simone, the one he had chosen over his marriage, dropped him like a broken, worthless toy the very instant she found out he was no longer successful. She didn't even pretend to care, not the slightest sympathy, not a shadow of regret, just a cold, calculated, pragmatic rejection. His worth to her was directly linked to his wallet and his projected success, and that wallet was now empty, and his success a smoking crater. He was an emptiness wrapped in an expensive suit, and now the suit itself felt suffocating. He realized that Tiffany had just been another, younger, more expensive version of his own profound greed. Devin didn't immediately grasp the full, horrifying extent of the catastrophe. He spent the next 2 days in a fruitless, panicked attempt to salvage the deal, calling Marcus and Tasha, begging, threatening, explaining the misunderstanding. He tried repeatedly to call Adrian Sterling to beg for forgiveness, but the boss didn't even pick up, responding only through his secretary with a dry official message. The termination is final. All questions go to the legal department. Do not contact Mr. Sterling again. No chances. No loopholes. No mercy. The door to his old life was slammed shut, completely and irrevocably. Legal department. The phrase sounded like the name of a prison he was destined for. He understood that his career in luxury real estate was utterly over, but the worst was yet to come. He had to go to the bank to review Simone's claim. He walked toward the bank's downtown office as if to an execution, realizing with every minute the crushing inevitability of his defeat. The air in the city felt heavy and judgmental, the expensive suits walking past him seeming to sneer at his own rapidly crumbling facade. In the small, stuffy, windowless office, Simone's lawyer, Mr. Charles Avery, waited for him, a slender, gray-haired man in a perfectly pressed charcoal suit with cold, penetrating eyes that seemed to analyze Devon's desperation. The lawyer did not stand up or offer a handshake, merely gesturing toward a hard wooden chair, signaling that ceremonies and personal warmth were unnecessary here. The air smelled of old paper, formality, and the dry, legal scent of finality, a scent that smothered Devon's own increasingly stale cologne. "Devon Vance, you have reviewed the notification," Mr. Avery stated, his voice flat, professional, and entirely without emotion. "Your wife, Simone Rhodes, is acting strictly within family and civil law. Mortgage restructuring, sale of the condo, division of funds, 50-50, as she is entitled. As an unemployed person without confirmed income and with evidence of potential financial fraud now on record, you cannot assert sole claim to the mortgage property. This is not a whim, Mr. Vance. It is the law. A very simple, very cold law." But I'll find a job," Devon stammered, feeling utterly pathetic, like a boy being scolded at school for cheating on a test. "I'll pay off the loan. I'll cover everything. This is our home. My home. I bought it." "That is entirely irrelevant to this matter," Mr. Avery replied, without lifting his eyes from the papers, tapping them with a pencil. He spoke evenly, like a machine, without a single inflection of sympathy. "Simone Rhodes has submitted comprehensive documents confirming that, unlike you, she is currently employed as a procurement director and has preliminary bank pre-approval for a new personal loan after paying off the old one. Furthermore, she correctly pointed out that your termination was the direct result of fraudulent actions, which is highly detrimental to your creditworthiness and your right to manage the asset. Therefore, you have virtually no chance of keeping the condo. The unit will be sold within the month and the proceeds divided. You must pack your belongings and vacate the premises, and it is strongly advisable to do so without further incident. Simone wants nothing but peace, finality, and justice." "She's taking revenge on me?" Devon burst out, almost weeping with despair, leaning forward in the hard chair. "She just wants to destroy me. She's bitter and jealous because Tiffany left me too." Mr. Avery looked up finally, his eyes locking onto Devon's. There was no emotion in them, only deep professional coldness, a man viewing an unpleasant but necessary stage of his work. "This is not revenge, Mr. Vance. This is a legal measure aimed at protecting her financial well-being from your profound irresponsibility, from your reckless actions that led to the loss of her share of the property and created potential catastrophic financial risk for her. If you have a formal counterclaim or a proposal, submit them in writing to my secretary. Otherwise, sign the acknowledgement of receipt and do not waste our time. We do not have the resources for it." Devon left the bank feeling utterly empty, hollowed out. Not only was his home taken, his very future was snatched away. The mortgage he viewed as his instrument of control had turned into a suffocating noose around his own neck. He was trapped, cornered, and there was no way out, no one left to call. He began frantically looking for work. He updated his resume, polishing the lies until they gleamed, but his phone remained deafeningly silent. He called old colleagues, but they replied with rehearsed excuses, that there was a crisis, no open positions, or they simply didn't pick up, ignoring his desperate successive calls. The few who answered spoke the words that became his constant mantra: "Adrian Sterling already warned everyone," or "We understand, but we don't want to ruin our firm's reputation." No one, absolutely no one, wanted to be associated with a man Adrian Sterling himself had labeled a fraud and a toxic asset. His name, Devin Vance, had become a black mark on the professional job market. His prized appearance began to change rapidly, mirroring his inner collapse. He stopped shaving regularly. He wore the same shirt, its fine fabric now permanently crumpled, smelling faintly of sweat, fear, and hopelessness. The little cash he had left was dwindling, not enough for decent food. He ate cheap, chemical-laced microwave meals and instant noodles. His self-esteem, which had fed ravenously on expensive restaurants and Tiffany's superficial flattery, collapsed into nothing. He no longer saw the successful business shark in the mirror. He saw a pathetic, frightened man with hollow cheeks, stubble, and faded, terrified eyes. He began to fear his own reflection, the face of his failure. Meanwhile, Simone was methodically building her new, unshakable life. Everything had been planned, executed with the cold precision of a Swiss watch, long before Devin stumbled in drunk that fateful morning. As an experienced procurement manager, she had always been adept at working with complex information, assessing risks, and calculating moves 10 steps in advance. Her revenge wasn't an emotional outburst, but a cold-blooded, precise, long-term operation of self-rescue. 2 months prior, she had met with her former boss at Omnistructura, Mr. Henderson, an old-school man who valued her above all for her precision, integrity, and analytical skills. He had offered her a significant promotion to supply chain director, a dream role, but she had wisely waited. She explained her situation without unnecessary, emotional detail, but clearly stating that she wanted to avoid any financial or reputational risks for the company. "Mr. Henderson, I will accept, but on the condition that I enter the role already divorced and completely free of my previous obligations," she told him, her voice level and professional. "My personal problems must not become a liability for you or create risks for the firm, and I need you to provide me with a clean, confident reference for the bank confirming my stability and potential." He agreed without a moment's hesitation, impressed by her foresight and caution. He knew the value of good employees, especially those capable of acting so coolly and deliberately in complex, high-stakes situations. She got the role, which not only gave her a substantial raise, but also a financial stability that played a decisive, crushing role in court. She wasn't just staying afloat. She was climbing a new, clean ladder. Every step was thought out. She consulted lawyers in advance, learned all the nuances of marital law, and meticulously prepared every piece of evidence. She didn't want to scream. She wanted to destroy the very reason he thought he was above her, to pull the financial foundation out from under his grotesquely inflated ego. She knew that for Devin, the public, irreversible loss of money, status, and reputation would be far worse than any physical violence or emotional breakdown. Her inner monologue was calm, clear, and focused, like the undisturbed surface of a lake on a windless day. "I feel no hatred," she resolved. "Hatred is a fire that burns you from the inside and makes you the same as the one you hate. I feel justice. He took 5 years of my life, my dignity, and my right to happiness. He placed himself above me because his suit was more expensive and I had the mortgage. He thought I was weak and dependent. Now he has neither the suit nor the money, and he's finding out what true dependency and real fear feel like. He chose this path himself, and I'm starting from scratch. But it's my scratch, clean, without his lying smell, without his betrayal. It's the foundation for my own, real, successful life." She didn't avoid him. She simply distanced herself completely. Her new, hardened attitude didn't allow her to waste energy on arguments or emotions that would only weaken her resolve. She was busy building her empire, small but unshakable. She focused entirely on herself, her future, her professional growth. She had no time to think about him, except as an unpleasant, distant episode that now belonged entirely to the past. Another month passed. The condo was officially sold, the transaction hastened by the court's decision to protect Simone's finances. Devin lived in a state of eternal, cold nightmare. He stayed in the rapidly emptying apartment until the very last day because he literally had nowhere else to go. His distant, highly religious relative, Auntie Clarice, whom he had tried to sweet-talk, explained with a dry severity, "I am not ready to take in such a public documented failure, Devon. You must solve your problems yourself first. You've disgraced your name." He slept on a threadbare mattress he pulled from the attic between empty, echoing walls that magnified his failure, his stupidity, and his spectacular greed. Every scratch on the wallpaper, every crack in the ceiling, every pale patch where their shared memories once hung, reminded him of how he had lost everything. He tried several times to ambush Simone near her new, impressive corporate building, hoping for a miracle, that she would show a sliver of weakness, of pity, that she would let him come back and start over, offering him some miserable, subordinate position in her new life. His once bloated pride had long been utterly broken. "Simone!" he shouted, desperation cracking his voice, as he saw her leave the building surrounded by two smartly dressed colleagues. His voice was hoarse, his face bloated and unshaven, his expensive clothes crumpled and stained with something unidentifiable. He looked exactly like a vagrant trying to reach a woman of significant status. She stopped. Her gaze, just as on that fateful night, was glacial, but now it wasn't just coldness. It was a visible, commanding force, a deep sense of self-respect and authority he had tried to take from her for so long. Her colleagues looked at her questioningly, but she only shook her head subtly, indicating with a clear, calm gesture that this man was not worthy of her attention or alarm. "Devon Vance," she stated, her voice carrying a professional finality. "If you have business matters, and I doubt you do, contact Mr. Avery. In personal matters, I consider myself free from any further communication with you. We are done, legally and emotionally." "Simone, how could you? We were family. Don't you see what you're doing? You destroyed me. You left me penniless. You abandoned me at the worst possible moment." He pleaded, with raised, trembling hands, a picture of absolute desperation. Simone took a small step forward, her posture radiating a calm, terrifying authority that struck him to the core. She looked at him as if he were an interesting but utterly harmless insect, momentarily halting its scramble across the sidewalk. "No, Devon," she corrected him, her voice steady and clear. "I gave you the chance to see your true self, nothing more. I didn't make you penniless. You made yourself that way the moment you decided money could replace respect, the moment you chose deception and betrayal over loyalty. That was your deal of the century, and you lost it. And you lost it all by yourself, because you fatally underestimated your partner. You abandoned yourself, Devon, not me. Goodbye." She turned, her colleagues following her lead, and got into a waiting rideshare car, its window tinted against the glare. He tried to run after the car, pounding a desperate fist against the glass, but the driver, seeing his distraught, aggressive look, accelerated sharply, fearing physical aggression. Devon remained standing in the middle of the busy, indifferent city street, dirty, utterly humiliated, screaming a wordless sound. His scream was unheard. It was swallowed by the overwhelming noise of the indifferent city, which was too busy succeeding to notice his personal, spectacular tragedy. His shout dissipated into the air, reaching no one but himself. Finally, the day came when he had to vacate the condo for good. His distant relative, Auntie Clarice, had finally relented, but on the strict, humiliating condition that he paid for his stay by cleaning, cooking, and doing small repairs, tasks for which the former high-rolling broker was entirely unsuited. He packed his belongings into the same cheap, unmarked cardboard boxes the bank had given him for the asset division. He couldn't bring himself to take anything truly valuable. His prized Italian suits were left behind. Everything felt desecrated by his failure. As he closed the door one last time, the new owners, a corpulent man and his equally large wife, waited for him in the hallway. They looked at him with undisguised superiority, like an unwanted, foul-smelling guest. "Well, finally," the man said, looking pointedly at his watch with irritation. "We've been waiting for half an hour. Hurry up, just leave the keys on the windowsill and go." Devon walked downstairs silently, dragging the boxes of his ruined life behind him. His last connection to his successful past was severed. The condo, his fortress, his gilded symbol of success, now belonged to others. He was an outcast, a man without an address or a name of respect. He moved in with Auntie Clarice, a distant relative who lived in a small, neglected house on the very edge of town. The house smelled intensely of old dust, mothballs, and the damp, cloying scent of autumn leaves, a profound, sickening contrast to his former high-rise luxury. She took him in with great displeasure, constantly reminding him of how he had squandered his money and how much smarter, colder, and more deliberate his wife had turned out to be. "Your Simone was quiet water, my boy," Auntie Clarice would often tell him, standing over him while he clumsily tried to weed the neglected garden. "But the deepest, most dangerous currents hide in quiet waters. You were only superficial, Devon, like a puddle after the rain, all splash and no depth." It was a constant, profound humiliation he wallowed in every day, feeling like a pathetic, dependent parasite. Every rebuke from her was like a painful blow, reminding him of his utter, irreversible fall. He was eventually forced to take a job as a warehouse laborer. At first, he convinced himself it was temporary, a blip, but his toxic reputation followed him like a shadow. Every attempt to get a decent white-collar job ended in the same cold rejection. "We heard about your history, Mr. Vance. We have a strict vetting process. Your reputation simply does not meet our ethical standards." Physical labor was sheer, grinding torture for a man accustomed to expensive Italian suits and air-conditioned office work. His hands became calloused and cracked. His back ached so much he couldn't straighten up fully without a painful groan. His prized appearance was permanently lost. He became indistinguishable in the crowd, the very thing he feared most in the world. No one noticed him anymore. No one looked at him with envy. No one wanted to talk to him or share his company. He became invisible, an empty, meaningless space where a successful man used to stand. One evening, as he sat in Auntie Clarice's old, creaking kitchen, waiting for dinner made of yesterday's thin stew, Mr. Avery called him one last time. "Devon Vance, you are now legally free from all obligations to Simone Rhodes. All legal proceedings are absolutely concluded, the mortgage is paid, and the assets divided according to the court order. From this moment on, no legal ties exist between you two. Simone has officially signed the paperwork that confirms she will not pursue further action, but she wants no further connection with you whatsoever." "And now what?" Devon's voice was indifferent, stripped of every emotion except bone-deep exhaustion. He felt as if he had already hit rock bottom, and nothing could surprise or upset him anymore. "And now—" Mr. Avery paused, letting the silence hang heavy. "Simone Rhodes asked me to relay one last thing to you. She wanted you to know that her share not only allowed her to buy her own studio condo, debt-free and in a much better, safer area, but also to invest significantly in her education. She has since completed a master's degree in international supply chain management and has secured a global certification that will enable her to reach a completely different, exponentially higher income bracket, possibly even internationally. She is successfully working as a director, and she is immensely valued." "And me?" Devon croaked, suddenly feeling a sharp, searing pain flare up in his chest that he thought he had forgotten. The burning pain of regret, but also the agonizing heat of envy for her assent. "And you, Mr. Vance, got exactly what you deserved," Mr. Avery concluded, his voice like ice water. "The complete collapse of your fraudulent life, and I, as her lawyer, will tell you openly, she feels absolutely nothing for you. Neither pity nor malice, only a profound, deep indifference, which is the greatest of all defeats for a man like you. Your suffering is strictly your own affair. She is free, secure, and genuinely happy. And she also relayed that thanks to this terrible experience, she understood that dignity, integrity, and self-respect are far more valuable and lasting than fleeting pleasures and flashy, disposable luxury, which she also, in her own words, wishes you the painful opportunity to learn. Remember that sometimes losing everything is the only way to find out who you truly are, under all the veneers. Devon slammed the phone onto the worn kitchen table. Auntie Clarice, who walked in carrying a plate of watery stew, didn't even flinch at the sound. Simone hadn't just destroyed him. She had done it without leaving him a single chance for sympathy or a shred of human connection. She had defeated him with cold dignity and legal precision, while he fell in spectacular drunken humiliation. He looked at his hands, rough, dirty, smelling of the warehouse and cheap sweat, and then he was utterly, soul-deeply humiliated. Humiliated that his plain mouse had not only escaped his trap, but had spectacularly succeeded, using his own despised weapons, cold calculation, and the meticulous collection of information. He hadn't just lost money, he had lost his very conviction that he was the best, the alpha male. His world had collapsed, leaving him alone in the ruins of his ambitions, dragging heavy boxes and forever dreaming of returning to the luxurious condo he himself had disgraced and lost. That was his true reckoning. He was cast down from the dizzying heights of his self-importance and shattered on hard, unforgiving reality. And Simone watched him from the balcony of her new, bright, free life, a life built on her own integrity. This was only the beginning of his long, painful journey to rock bottom, where he was finally forced to learn the actual price of every single betrayal and perhaps one day understand the true, liberating power of the cold fire of justice. Now, it was time for him to clean up his own profoundly damaged garden.